I'm with Daniel Peachy, Head of Strategic Acquisitions at Window Property Group, and we're just going to give you guys a property market update as to what we're seeing happening on the ground and in other states across the country. So from an overall perspective, we're seeing that prices have dropped around the 0.1 to 0.5% across major capital cities, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide. Perth has slightly risen over the past 28 days by 0.1%. But states that we are quite active in, we are seeing that there's more opportunities right now, just in terms of negotiation power, and I guess finding deals that stack up nicely. One, because we are seeing interest rates on the rise, but also vacancy rates are dropping. They're at historical lows as we speak. And Dan, what are your thoughts regarding that? And what are you seeing when you're negotiating deals for clients also?
It's been crazy since our last podcast, to be honest with you, like the market in general. As you know, we were trying to purchase in Adelaide for a few clients, which was quite interesting and quite challenging, based on the fact that the prices were, $4 to $450, and then they were selling for $550 to $580.
Well,
with a 2-day cooling off period, so it was quite difficult, and we ended up getting that a couple of properties off market and saving our clients 50 to 100K, which was absolutely unbelievable. But now I've noticed even the Adelaide market's sort of starting to cool off a little bit.
Yep.
The agents are now starting to call me back. They're sending me more properties. There's a lot more stock. There's less competition. Like, as I said, the market was that hot before. We got beaten by 31 offers at one stage, and it was just driving an unpredictable market.
Yep.
It's got still some good growth there, but now that it's starting to chill out a bit from so many buyers, there's a lot more deals to be made there.
For sure.
And with the relaxed council regulations and smaller block sizes for subdivision, there is some quite really good opportunities out there. But I've noticed we've been getting a lot better deals with probably a lot better growth, in my opinion, in Queensland.
Okay.
There's been a little bit of a drop, but let's say, like we negotiated a good one up there that was 600K, and we got 60K off it, which is 10%. So you talk about, in the last few weeks, the 0.1 to 1 to 2% in some places that there's sort of been a drop. That's great, and people think that's
on an overall level, but
on an overall level, right? So we're getting, and let's say overall it's 2% down, example, in the last month. And then you say, well, in the areas we're looking, it's actually even. And then you go, well, we're actually negotiating 5 to 10% off.
Yeah.
So these clients are getting 50, 60K back in their pockets at this current market. And they've also got the rental yields, vacancy rate so low at the moment. The vacancy is 0.2, 0.3 in a lot of those areas up there. So what that's doing is driving the rent increase. So then we're getting 50, 60K off it. We're getting an extra $50, $60 a week rent.
Yep.
Getting the house cheaper, paying it down faster. So then when the next boom does happen, or there is another good opportunity, then you can buy again, as we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
Buy while it's low, and you can negotiate instead of buying while it's hot and the Uber driver's telling you it's a good time to buy a property.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, those are great points, Dan. And also what we're seeing in the market also, it's like prices are starting to decline. Rental rates are starting to increase. So it just means that people would attract not necessarily a better quality tenant, but they'll be able to hold on to their properties for longer, because if you're able to make your repayments, you're better able to service your mortgage. So there's a lot of cash flow positive opportunities right now. Comparing that to I guess 2 years ago, a lot of properties you would have purchased in Sydney, for example, you would have been negatively geared. But right now, because vacancy rates are so low, supply is not meeting demand, and the majority of people are renting. you're just able to better service your loans now. So yeah, it's a great time to purchase property, providing that you meet the requirements, right, and you are able to service that debt and buy well in an established area and get a quality tenant in your property.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good point. Like I think now, like I think the ball's in the buyer's point per se, but also from an investor point of view, the ball's also in your investment court as well, because you can have 100 inquiries for an apartment which is in the middle of nowhere, or you can have 300 inquiries for an apartment in Campbelltown or Liverpool. Like, it's unbelievable. So from a renter, that's one, it's going to be hard to find. But from an investor perspective, it's like, well, I don't just have to take the first person that comes in because I need to pay my repayments. I can get better money. I can get longer terms. I can get better conditions. I can get someone that wants to stay there for, let's say it's an SMSF. I could potentially sign a longer term lease to make sure that I've got that in the bag, because that the market's deriving those outcomes. So from an investor perspective, it's really good, the rental market.
Yeah.
But the really important thing about it is you've got to make sure you've got the right property managers in place to make sure that you're getting the most amount of rent. Because as I keep saying, like we look at some of these properties that we take over the management and they haven't had rent increased in 7 years.
Yeah.
Like, what was your rental manager in Bali for 7 years getting the rent or something? Like, where were they?
Yeah, exactly right. Like we see, like now is a perfect time to review your rent, because there's opportunities right there. A lot of property managers don't include this in their checklist. Like with my Brisbane property, I had to go to my property manager and be like, oh, hey, it's time to increase the rent because the market's moved. My interest rates have gone up. So in turn, my rents need to go up too. And and then they acted on that. But it would have been nice to get a notification saying, oh, hey, owners, by the way, the market's moved and your property, your type of property is now attracting $550 in rent rather than $450 in rent. We can issue a notice of rental increase, for example. So these are just examples. And of course, there are extreme cases whereby landlords are trying to milk the market. We don't condone that, of course, but we do understand that property is a numbers game, and you need to be able to increase your rents in line with inflation and all that kind of stuff, or at least above that. So yeah.
And
what are your thoughts on that, Dan?
I think that's a good point too. Like, you've got to understand that, like, just from an investment perspective, like, we want to obviously get the client the best return, but we also want to get the client the best type of client.
Long term, yeah, goes in both.
It's going to be long term, because
goes in both.
You might get
ways.
$10 less a week rent for a client, but they move every 6 months. Like, I would prefer to get the $10 less, not have to pay a letting fee, and let that person stay there for 5 years, 10 years. Like,
exactly.
It's all about the numbers game, right?
Yep. And then in turn, you get your property maintained. They look after it. They make the gardens and everything beautiful. It's a beautiful relationship. It's a win-win.
Yeah, and then as you said, like, it's about making sure the money's not too expensive for the renter as well, because they've got to have somewhere to live. But if they're paying money, they want quality service as well. Yeah. They want their repairs done. They want all these things updated. They don't want, like, I had a client I was speaking to the other day that we took over, and they didn't have a heater for 2 years.
Yeah, that's insane.
One, that's illegal, but two, like, the morals of not giving people that are paying $550 a week rent for an apartment, not giving them a heater.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. Like, that's just basic needs.
Yeah, it's like it should be standard, but
and that's what we're finding. So, like, that's where it's our job also, to be the middle person and go, hey, Mr. Investor, I want to get you the most money possible, but hey,
you've got no heating. Your property isn't up to scratch. Yeah,
exactly, and that's where we educate our clients and go, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Investor, you need to get this fixed. because I'm telling you, this is a really good tenant, and they'll go somewhere else if you don't get that fixed. And that's our job, to educate them and get them done. Correct. And then us as a rental manager, if that landlord doesn't want to do basic things like a heater, then we don't want to manage them anymore. We don't want that business, because they don't care about looking after the person as well, which is
exactly
predominantly
right.
what you're doing. Yeah, you're housing people. You're putting them in a home.
Correct.
So you've got to make sure that you have basic understanding of human rights.
Yeah, like that's where people live, work, and play. So yeah,
Exactly.
so 100%.
That's what I reckon.
And you know, the tenants help when you pay off your mortgage. So in turn, you got to give back, or not even give back. It's a responsibility.
Yeah, it's just
It's
courtesy.
just it's just a necessity. So yeah. But was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Nah, that's
Market
not my
update?
wrap at the moment. To summarise, it is negotiate, buy at the moment. It's
Awesome.
selling. Unless you have to sell, I think there's going to be a lot of room for negotiating from the buyer's end.
Yeah.
And if with the rent so low, the vacancies, if you're an investor to sell now just to keep the cash, I think my opinion is that would be silly. Just because
Not financial advice or
at all. That's why I said my opinion.
yep.
My personal opinion is that would be an issue, because you want to sell.
educational content.
Absolutely. You want to sell when the market's hot, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Like you buy something that's half price. Great.
Yeah.
You don't wait for it to go to full price, do you?
Correct. Yeah. Everyone loves a deal, right? So you can consider this type of market like, you know, your Black Friday or your
100%.
Cyber Mondays, mate. I know
Mad Monday, yeah.
Danny P doesn't mind a deal, 50% off here, 70% off there. So
Oh, yeah. I got my house 90% off.
there you go. So, all right, guys. So that's it for our market update wrap for August, and we look to touch base with you next month.
Thanks for the wrap, guys.